Hi, here we are on our third essay, the Modernism essay. Choose one of the following topics and construct an argumentative essay based on research and your own close reading of the primary text. Okay, so you can choose one of these four questions. First of all, how does the poetry of either William Butler Yeats or Thomas Stearns Eliot demonstrate the characteristics of modernism as an intellectual and artistic movement? You may cite our textbook when establishing a definition of modernism. Okay, so you need to understand what modernism is. Don't just look it up in a Webster's dictionary. That's, of course, inadequate. So use our textbook for the definition. If you're not using our textbook, you better find something that's suitable. Again, not an ordinary dictionary. That's not suitable. You're required to engage at least 2 works from our syllabus by your chosen author. Okay, so in Eliot's case, we only have 2 works, so you'll have to engage with both of them. Yeats, you have a little bit more selection. Next question. Using one of the short stories from our syllabus, argue how James Joyce employs the concept of epiphany. What is the purpose and effect of his use? Be sure to define the term as a literary concept early in your essay. Again, our textbook does that. It does have a good definition of epiphany. But again, some of you do not have the textbook, so you better find a good one. Again, do not just go to Merriam-Webster's dictionary. That's lazy and inadequate. Question 3. What does the stream of consciousness narration in Mrs. Dalloway, that's the novel, by Virginia Woolf, suggest about human consciousness or identity? How does this technique affect the role of time in the novel? Okay, so obviously Mrs. Dalloway is a big deal for us this semester. It is the only novel that we are working on, and this would be a really good question to choose if you are so inclined. All right, there's a lot to be said. Or you may choose one of the modernist authors from the syllabus, which is basically Yeats, Eliot, Joyce, Virginia Woolf. Argue how he or she uses contemporary affairs, history, religion, artistic or literary tradition, and or other manifestations of culture to create works that are pregnant with new meaning. So this is the question, which is basically a bit broader, a bit more wide open, kind of allows you to go in other directions than maybe what the other questions ask you to do. The paper is due to be submitted to Canvas by Monday, August the 2nd, 11:59 p.m. Be sure to follow the out-of-class essay guidelines for matters of form and style. Use correct MLA documentation as described in the MLA for Literature class handout and or the MLA Handbook 9th edition. A number of you have problems with this for some strange reason. Really want to kind of iron that out. Right? No APA format. No kind of loosey-goosey, make up your own format, right? MLA documentation. Be sure to include a word count at the end of your essay. Remember, you must meet minimum requirements, including word count, sources, and subject. But remember, minimums are not maximums. You can always go over. No late essays will be accepted without a verifiable medical or legal excuse, right? But we all know that. So the minimum requirements are pretty much the same as they've been for the previous 2 essays. We're looking at an essay of roughly at least 1,000 to approximately 1,400 words. Some of you have gone longer, and that's okay, as long as, quite frankly, it's good and interesting and justified to go that long. Some papers, absolutely, you need to go longer, but long by itself does not make a good essay. Okay, and I've read more than one essay where I've said it would have been better shorter. Make sure you have citations from at least 4 different sources. One of the sources must be the primary text. That would be the novel, the short story, or the poem. Okay. 2 sources at least must be from scholarly works. Scholarly works would be things like dissertations, peer-reviewed journal articles, or excerpts from university press books. Okay. The 4th source can be a source of your own choosing, but it must be a credible analytical source in its own right. Okay, in other words, the 4th source is a little bit more open, does not necessarily have to be peer-reviewed, but nevertheless must be a highly credible source. Okay, junk sources do not count as highly credible sources. Our textbook will count only for the primary text, although you may certainly use the editorial materials in your essay, right? That's one of the reasons why we have the Norton Anthology, because of its excellent editorial support. And as I said, you may have more than these 4 sources. Again, MLA format and presentation and documentation, including correct in-text documentation and works cited. Using any other format, or a non-format, if you will lower your grade significantly. So please, as you think about the Modernism essay, right, read through the questions, read through the original materials, that is, the poems, the short stories, the novel. Think about what you are most excited about as you look at this. Modernism as a movement is, of course, highly influential in our own time, although we're no longer in the Modernism period as typically defined. But there is a certain, how shall I say, power in modernism that has basically shaped the rest of the century, of the 20th century, and on into the 21st. In a similar way that I like to say that we are living in post-romantic times, meaning that the romantic poets and thinkers and musicians still have such a heavy influence, even if we are not fully engaged with romanticism. The same thing could well be said about modernism, which is kind of fairly anti-romantic. You want to look at my modernism handout and watch the video that's associated with the modernism handout, as well as, of course, reading the Greenblatt essay, or preface, I should say, the subject heading for modernism. Okay? Very good.